Hello and welcome back to Mystery of Israel Radio, the radio program that focuses on God's unfulfilled promises to Israel and how they relate to Israel's Messiah, the one we Gentiles know as Jesus Christ. I'm Tom Quinlan, your host, and if you've been following along, you'll know that we're in Daniel chapter 9. And we began to look last week at the covenantal foundations and what it is that's moving Daniel to pray to God with all his heart, confessing his sins and the sins of his people Israel, concerning Israel's restoration after 70 years of exile in Babylon, Israel's restoration to the land and to the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. So I was planning to move on into the answer to Daniel's prayer and the revelation of the 77s that are decreed for his people. But I think we need to step back and not rush through these covenantal foundations. There's some things that Daniel says in this prayer that really necessitate that we go back and think about what God has already said to Israel. The promises that God made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the covenant that he made with Israel at Sinai as they left Egypt. So, I'm going to read a few verses of Daniel's prayer. Some of these we read last week, so bear with me if you heard them last time. But this is so rich and so foundational that it bears repeating and meditating on over and over again, as Daniel meditated on these things day and night. So I'm going to read from Daniel chapter 9, verse 4, at least through verse 11. And I prayed unto the Lord my God, and made my confession, and said, O Lord, the great and dreadful God, keeping the covenant and mercy to them that love him and to them that keep his commandments. We have sinned and have committed iniquity and have done wickedly and have rebelled, even by departing from thy precepts and from thy judgments. Neither have we hearkened unto thy servants the prophets, which spake in thy name to our kings, our princes, and our fathers, and to all the people of the land. O Lord, righteousness belongs unto thee, but unto us confusion of faces, as at this day. To the men of Judah and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and unto all Israel that are near and that are far off, through all the countries whither thou hast driven them, because of their trespass that they have trespassed against thee. O Lord, unto us belongs confusion of face, to our kings, to our princes, to our fathers, because we have sinned against thee. To the Lord our God belong mercies and forgiveness, though we have rebelled against him. Neither have we obeyed the voice of the Lord our God to walk in his laws, which he set before us by his servants the prophets. Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing, that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, because we have sinned against him. And he has confirmed his words which he spoke against us and against our judges that judged us, by bringing upon us a great evil. For under the whole heaven hath not been done as has been done upon Jerusalem. As it is written in the law of Moses, all this evil is come upon us, yet made we not our prayer before the Lord our God, that we might turn from our iniquities and understand thy truth. Therefore hath the Lord watched upon the evil, and brought it upon us. For the Lord our God is righteous in all his works which he doeth, for we obeyed not his voice. And now, O Lord our God, that has brought thy people forth out of the land of Egypt with a mighty hand, and has gotten thee renown, as at this day, we have sinned, we have done wickedly. O Lord, according to all thy righteousness, I beseech thee, let thine anger and thy fury be turned away from thy city Jerusalem, thy holy mountain, because for our sins and for the iniquity of our fathers, Jerusalem and thy people are become a reproach to all that are about us. Now, therefore, O our God, hear the prayer of thy servant and his supplications, and cause thy servant and his supplications, and cause your face to shine upon your sanctuary that is desolate, for the Lord's sake. O my God, incline your ear and hear, open your eyes and behold our desolations, and the city which is called by your name. For we do not present our supplications before thee for our righteousnesses, but for thy great mercies. O Lord, hear. O Lord, forgive. O Lord, hearken and do. Defer not. For thine own sake, O my God, for thy city and thy people are called by thy name. And while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God, for the holy mountain of my God, yea, whiles I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, in chapter 8, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me at about the time of the evening oblation. So there's one little phrase in here that I want to look back on in Deuteronomy, even Leviticus, where it said in verse 11, I'm going to read this in a different translation this time. All Israel has transgressed your law and turned away, refusing to obey you. Therefore the curses and sworn judgments, the sworn judgments. We looked at the curses last week, but I want to focus on that phrase, the sworn judgments. The oath, it says in the King James, that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, because we have sinned against him. The oath. God has sworn. When God swears that he's going to do something, you can take it to the bank that it's going to be done. So let's look back in the law of Moses and let's see if we can find where that sworn oath is. I want to flip over to Deuteronomy chapter 4. And this is Moses speaking to the people towards the end of his life. And he's predicting, of course, that they will go into the land and they will possess it. And he says in verse 25 of chapter 4, when you shall beget children and children's children, and you shall have remained long in the land. This is what Daniel's ancestors had experienced. They'd been long in the land. And shall corrupt yourselves, and make a graven image, or the likeness of anything, and shall do evil in the sight of the Lord thy God, to provoke him to anger. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that you shall soon utterly perish from off the land whereunto you go over the Jordan to possess it. You shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed. And the Lord shall scatter you among the nations, and you shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither the Lord shall lead you. And there you shall serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear nor eat nor smell. But if from thence thou shalt seek the Lord your God, you shall find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you are in tribulation, and all these things are come upon thee, even in the latter days, these days, if you turn to the Lord your God, and shall be obedient to his voice, for the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not forsake thee, neither destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of your fathers, which he sware unto them. If from there you shall seek the Lord your God, you shall find him, if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. And this is exactly where Daniel was. He was seeking the Lord his God with all of his heart and with all of his soul, and confessing his sins and the sins of his people. He was acknowledging that God was right in sending him to exile those 70 years ago. He was acknowledging that God was keeping his own oath by destroying his sanctuary and punishing his own people, not for the purpose of harming them, but for the purpose of turning them towards the goodness of God. And this is the purpose of these latter days. It is to chastise all of us into acknowledging that God has destroyed his perfect sanctuary, his one and only begotten Son, because of our sins, because of our turning away from him and doing our own thing. The tribulations that we may have been going through have been intended to bring us face to face with the Son of God, whom we have pierced, whom we have nailed to the cross. And when we acknowledge that, it's the beginning of righteousness. It's the beginning of God filling us afresh with his very own Spirit. This is good news. And God has good news for Daniel when we get together next time. This is Mystery of Israel Radio.